Hi ladies, in this video I'm going to be talking all about the follicular phase and why it is such a crucial time to pay attention to when we're talking about preconception, fertility health, and healthy ovulation. If you want to have a healthy, successful ovulation, you have to have a healthy, successful follicular phase. Before we get into it, if you could please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if these topics interest you. Ring the bell if you want to receive notifications every time I release a new video. For anyone who is not totally familiar with the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, I'm going to recap them super briefly right now. Your menstrual phase is the beginning of your menstrual cycle. Day 1 of your period is day 1 of your cycle. And that phase usually lasts roughly around 5 to 7 days. Everyone's a little bit different with these time frames, so bear with me. The phase that we're going to be discussing in depth today comes right after the menstrual phase, and that is the follicular phase. This starts around day 5 of your period and lasts until around day 14 to 16 of your cycle. This follicular phase is about a week and a half long, and so many super important things are happening during this phase to support your overall reproductive health and to ensure that you are able to have a successful ovulation. The phase that comes right after this is your ovulatory phase, which is a really short phase. It's just about 3 to 6 days at most, and this is when your hormones are peaking at their highest level and your body is releasing that egg. After that, we have the 4th phase, which is your luteal phase. This is when all of your hormones are starting to decline and you are preparing for menstruation. But this video is all about your follicular phase and how crucial it is to have a successful follicular phase in terms of getting pregnant. During your follicular phase, about a week and a half from roughly day 5 of your cycle to right around day 12 to 14, your body is doing some super important stuff. First of all, it is working on growing multiple follicles, and from those follicles, it's going to select one to release an egg. It's going to use its innate intelligence to select the best follicle it has created. Also during this time, your body is building up, rebuilding in that week and a half window your uterine lining. Now, keep in mind that just moments before in your menstrual phase, when you were on your period, you were literally shedding your uterine lining. That's what your period is. You're shedding this uterine lining that your body has worked so hard to build. So you're basically starting from scratch and you're building it up all over again. And you have to, in that little window of time, from the time that you stop bleeding until the moment that you ovulate, build it up enough so that it is strong and healthy and thick enough to receive an egg for implantation and embryonic development. If the uterine lining is not sufficiently built up, it is not strong enough, then oftentimes this can lead to chemical pregnancy or early miscarriage, or can prevent a woman from conceiving at all. The hormones that are most prevalent during your follicular phase are FSH, which is follicle stimulating hormone, LH, which is luteinizing hormone, and estrogen. Follicle stimulating hormone is predominantly in charge of stimulating the growth of the follicles that are going to release the egg. Luteinizing hormone plays an intricate role communicating through the brain and your ovaries via the HPO hormonal axis. And this is really signaling your process of preparing to release the egg, and your body relies on a surge of luteinizing hormone to actually release that egg. Estrogen is working on building up that uterine lining. Estrogen is also regulating the thinness or thickness of your cervical fluid during this time. All really important factors that can't be overlooked for fertility and conception. And all these hormones are really working together in this delicate orchestra to enable the ovulation to occur. It's really important that the follicular phase is effective, that you're able to grow this healthy uterine lining, that you're able to grow a nice healthy follicle. In order for your body to ovulate, in order for you to be able to conceive, to get pregnant, to become a mother. And it's really this short window of time, and there's so much that you can do to support your body during this very crucial time, and that's what we're about to get into. So, how to make the best out of your follicular phase. I like to think of this phase as springtime. Your menstrual phase, which is when you have your period, that's sort of like winter. Everything is resting, your hormones are at their lowest point, and as you rise up into your follicular phase, this is sort of a time of rebirth, rejuvenation. This is metaphorically your inner spring. And in springtime, what do we do to our garden? We spread the fertilizer. We are fertilizing our body so that we have enough substrate, enough building blocks, enough nutrients to build our hormones, enough proteins to build that uterine lining, to build those follicles. So if you view this as a time of fertilizing your body, you can do this by fertilizing it with lots of different, diverse, nutrient-dense foods. Some of the nutrients that you want to focus more heavily on during your follicular phase are choline, B12, magnesium, potassium, iron, zinc, and vitamin D. During the other phases of the menstrual cycle, there are some other nutrients that become more important at that time, but the follicular phase really demands the most diversity of nutrients, and these ones are of particular importance. So what are a few foods that you can look to and consume to get some of these nutrients through your diet? Of course, you can use supplementation, and I absolutely do recommend that. Because of soil depletion, our food source has become far less nutrient dense than it was just 50 years ago. But regardless of that unfortunate fact, here are some foods that will help you get some dietary sources of these very vital nutrients for the follicular phase. Pay more attention to consuming things such as red meat, mussels, oysters, chickpeas, wild rice, quinoa, and shiitake mushrooms. These are just a few very nutrient-packed superfoods where you can access a lot of the nutrients that I listed before. Aside from dietary factors, there's a lot that you can do to support your follicular phase by reducing your stress load. So what are some examples of things that you can do? And first and foremost, why is that so important? Well, during this phase, your body really needs seamless communication via both the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, and the HPO axis, which is the hypothalamus pituitary ovarian axis. Both of these axes are very important in the role of creating healthy sex hormones, supporting the process of building up those follicles and releasing an egg for ovulation. And stress really interferes with all of that signaling in your brain from the hypothalamus to the pituitary and then to either the adrenals or the ovaries. So here are a couple examples of what you can do to reduce your stress during the follicular phase, and truly you should be doing this all throughout the month when you're trying to get pregnant. Overworking is a big, big no-no. I know it's hard to hear because we live in such a work-driven, financially driven, achievement-driven society, and a lot of pressure is put on women more so than ever before when it comes to financial upkeep of a household and supporting a family. And this really clashes with the femininity and rest that is required for her hormones and ovulation to be functioning properly. So I understand if you have a job, if you have a lot on your plate, and you have to kind of keep up with these things. You can't just drop the ball on everything during this process, but it's really important to evaluate What is your level of importance with these things? How can you cut back? What doesn't absolutely need to be done? What can be eliminated? And to really offload as much of your work-related stress as possible and make sure that you're not adding too many things to your to-do list. You're not burning yourself out, because that is not going to help with this process. Overanalyzing is another really big stress factor. Women tend to hyperanalyze things, overthink them, turn them over in their mind, and it's really important to release some of this emotional stress, to release hold and control on things, and to learn how to lean more fully into trust. Of course, analyzing is a survival tactic, and it is a very important part of how we make our decisions, but we have to pull back a little bit during the time of preconception and pregnancy and postpartum, because our bodies need to rest. We need not only physical rest, but rest from mental stimulation as well, especially if that overanalyzing factor is impacting our stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Caffeine is a really, really important thing to reduce to an absolute minimum, and ideally to cut out completely, because every time you consume caffeine, you are artificially stimulating your adrenal glands to release cortisol and adrenaline, and these hormones are interfering with the LH signaling between your brain and your ovaries. They are interfering with the production of your DHEA, which is the mother hormone to your estrogen and your progesterone, which are so important for reproductive health and ovulation. We literally cannot do without them in this process. And we are a society that is extremely dependent and addicted to caffeine, and it's really important to evaluate that for yourself and consider the fact that if you really struggle without caffeine, that you probably have some gut and hormone related stuff going on that really needs to be resolved before pregnancy anyway. And you can do that by working with a functional health practitioner like myself. Another thing you don't want to do, which is a common mistake for a lot of women when trying to get pregnant, is over-exercising. Exercise is amazingly beneficial to your hormones, but there is a point of over-exercising, especially if you're not getting enough adequate nutrition before you exercise. That is going to, similarly to caffeine, overstimulate your adrenals and put too much cortisol and adrenaline into your system and sort of start to screw with your reproductive hormones and that HPA and HBO axis signaling that is so important to this process. So scale back your workouts a little bit if you're really into HIIT workouts and extreme cardio. Try going for shorter workouts, maybe just 10 minutes. Don't do it every day of the week. Focus more on weight training, strength training, long walks, and yoga. Something else that's not helpful during the follicular phase if you are trying to conceive and have a baby is fasting. Just like caffeine and over-exercising, fasting is putting stress on your adrenals. It is causing your body to crank out way too much cortisol. And while fasting has health benefits for many specific reasons, in this particular application, it can be detrimental, and we want to be looking to support the adrenals and support your liver and support your kidneys more than trying to radically detox them and put that kind of stress on the body, at least during this time of your life. Fighting with your partner, if this is something that comes up a lot, that means you really have something that you need to address and resolve, and that can be done through coaching, therapy, talking it out. You really need to be able to open your hearts, hear each other out, listen to each other, recognize each other's needs, take radical responsibility for what's going on with your personal emotional traumas and how that's at play with these fights that are coming up in the relationship. Incessant fighting is something that you're going to want to resolve before you become pregnant, because every hormone that you're experiencing during pregnancy is also felt by the fetus, and that means your baby, your child, is learning your stress responses before they're even born and can be setting them up for a lot of mental health issues down the line. It's also important to resolve this because during those early developmental years, from like 1 to 5, your children are going to be looking to you for learning how to regulate their own emotions. And if you and your partner are fighting excessively, it's going to model a lot of emotional trauma to them at a very young age. If this is something that you cannot work out with your partner, then it's important to consider if this is really the right person for you to be starting a family with. By no means should we be sacrificing the best interest of ourselves or our children just to stay with one particular partner out of fear. And lastly, I will mention inflammatory foods. You can identify what foods are causing inflammation by running a food sensitivity test with a functional health practitioner like myself. But you can also just look to eliminating the most common inflammatory foods, which are gluten, dairy, alcohol, caffeine. Don't eat anything processed. Cut out all genetically modified foods, especially genetically modified corn and corn syrup. And make sure that you are not consuming too much sugar because this can be extremely inflammatory. Inflammation, like caffeine, like overexercising, causes the release of many inflammatory compounds in the body, including histamine, but also impacts the release of cortisol from the adrenals and adrenaline. And this really impacts your sex hormones and the HPA and HPO signaling, which I will continue saying again and again because it is truly the most important axes that your body is utilizing to enable your reproductive health. And lastly, before we go, I will just say that healthy ovulation is success. That is your body succeeding at health. As a woman, it doesn't matter if you're trying to get pregnant or not. If you are experiencing a healthy menstrual cycle and healthy ovulation, that is a mirror. It is a reflection of the health of your gut. It is a reflection of your nutrient density, your mineral balance. It is impacting your heart health, your brain health, your bone health. All of these things are tied together. And if you have a healthy ovulation and a healthy menstrual cycle, that's a really good sign for your longevity in general. I hope that this video was super helpful to you. Don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. If you're interested in working one-to-one with a functional health practitioner who specializes in fertility, I use functional lab testing to go in depth with my clients to find out what hormonal challenges they're facing, what's going on in their gut microbiome, what's going on with their mineral balance and their food sensitivities, and how we can support all of their unique biomarkers in enabling healthy fertility, healthy preconception, and getting ready for that transition into parenthood. Head on over to my website, holistichealingdiagnostics.com, to schedule a free consultation with me. Wishing you all the best on your preconception and fertility journey.